For many years the kingdom of Aegean was an isolationist country. Its military was weak and its people were unhappy. The monarchy was unable to do anything productive besides party. The country was nothing more than a slump, yet it was peaceful. If not for its relatively remote area, the country would have been conquered years ago, but all things come to an end. The peace was broken when the king decided to attack the Pope due to religious tensions, and, as a show of power, the kingdom prepared to invade and conquer Sicily. The invasion caught the Pope off guard. Greek soldiers landed in Palermo and other Sicilian cities. The fighting was brutal, as the garrisons fought for the cities with their lives. Yet they were no match. The landings were successful, and the Greeks had established defenses in case of a counterattack. The counterattack came only a week after the landing. The Pope had gathered an army to fight the invaders in the name of God. When the Pope's counterattack started, it came with the power of God's fist. The Pope's militia smashed into the Greek lines. The Greek army, which had low morale and was poorly trained, folded from the resolve of the militiamen. The Greeks were forced to retreat into the port cities and set up defenses. If only they knew this would be the last battle of the war. A new enemy was breathing on the neck of Greece, Moldova. The Moldovan invasion caught Greece completely off guard, as Greece was too focused on the Pope to notice the movement of Moldovan armies into Anatolia and on towards the Greek border. The Greeks only noticed the build-up after the invasion had begun. The Moldovan advance was swift and effective. They managed to not only smash through Thrace, but also through Greece's Anatolian lands. Many, including the Greek king, believed the war was over, but they kept fighting, as they believed a surrender would mean the annexation of Greece. So the king and his general staff decided that they would fight Moldova until the last man. However, one major problem arose: the Battle of Constantinople. The Moldovan invasion had reached Constantinople, the city of the world's desire. Like a raging bull, the Moldovan invaders stomped upon the city with full force. They burned down houses and killed anyone who was believed to be a soldier. However, all the Moldovan atrocities did was make the Greek people even more angry. This led to more partisan attacks, and the chant of Constantine's spirit lies within the Greek people, not the city. Still, these attacks didn't stop Moldova from marching further into the city. The first day of the battle began with a fighting retreat by the Greek army in Constantinople. The Greek army, of around 90,000, was outnumbered by the larger Moldovan army, of around 140,000. The commander, Napoleon Zervas, knew that holding the city would be all but impossible, but he also knew he couldn't let the city fall without a fight. So he prepared to evacuate the Greek people from the city towards the Aegean island. The royal family, however, refused to leave the city, as they believed the city wouldn't fall. The second day saw the Greek army pushed even further back into the city, along with the Moldovan invasion of Georgia's islands. The invasion was somewhat stopped, thanks to the royal guard and local garrisons. Still, this was the only good news from the city that day, as the Moldovans continued to push into the city with all their might. No matter how many the Greeks killed, more and more Moldovans would show up and reinforce their attacking forces. The Greek army was once again forced to retreat further into the city. The third day saw the most fighting. As Moldova committed another 200,000 men to the assault, the Greeks were unable to hold on any longer. The Moldovans slowly approached the royal palace and the Maiden's Tower. Many Greek soldiers surrendered as Napoleon was called to lead the forces in Athens. On the final day, the city finally fell. The Hagia Sophia fell along with the palace and other historical sites. The royal family was able to escape before the Moldovans could capture them. The Greek fleet escorted the royal family, along with civilians, to Athens. Athens would now serve as the temporary capital of the kingdom. The Greek army, now returning home from Sicily, prepared for their next move. The loss at Constantinople was a crushing blow for morale, and many believed that the large loss of men was the fault of the monarchy, who refused to leave until the city was all but captured. The Greek army was preparing along the mountains near Mount Olympus. The Greek command planned to retake Thessaloniki and set up defenses along a more favorable area. For this operation to work, the Greek command gathered 210,000 conscripts and veterans to attack. The operation would be split between two stages, green and blue. Stage Green would focus on capturing the mountain range that separates Macedonia from Thessaly. Stage Blue would focus on capturing Thessaloniki via a frontal assault. The operation began on June 3, 1940. The 1st and 2nd Greek army groups, each comprising 50,000, began their march along the mountains. The Moldovan defenders didn't think much of the advance, considering they believed they had already won the war, so they were caught completely off guard by the large Greek attack. The Moldovans were pushed from their positions in the mountain. Now they were forced towards Thessaloniki. The Moldovans quickly began setting up defenses around Thessaloniki, as they feared another offensive. The Moldovans were right to do such a thing, as only 2 days later the Greeks launched Stage Blue. Stage Blue started with a light bombardment on Thessaloniki, followed by a march towards the city. The Greek assault force consisted of 24,000 men, along with 30,000 reserves. The frontal assault on the city failed, as the Moldovan artillery in there completely stopped the Greeks in their tracks. The assault force decided to retreat after they were unable to break the outer defenses. Greece had secured its position in the north.
As the front in the north went silent, the Greek and Moldovan commanders planned their next moves. Both had a single idea: hit the other where it hurt. Greece planned to retake Smyrna and other Anatolian lands. They hoped that this would distract Moldovan forces, allowing Greece to attempt to retake Macedonia. The Moldovans planned to take the Aegean islands so they could cut off Greek supplies into Athens. Moldova would act first, as they launched their invasion with an army of 120,000 men. The Greek army, which was gathering on the islands, had around 50,000 men. They were completely caught off guard by the large-scale invasion. The main battle took place on Rhodes. The island was heavily defended by the Greek fleet and an army of 4,000. The Moldovans began their attack with an airborne invasion of around 300 against the island. The airborne assault aimed at destroying coastal batteries, forts, and Greek ships. The assault failed though, as the paratroopers were overwhelmed by the sheer amount of Greeks on the island. Still, the news of the failure never reached the Moldovan Marine Force, who had already begun moving towards the island. They landed at 6 p.m. June 12, 1940. The initial invasion was met with heavy resistance, as Greek ships, artillery, and machine gun fire rained upon the invaders. After an hour, the Moldovans were able to land with a force of 6,000 along the entire coast. Rhodes, the city, fell to the Moldovans after heavy fighting. In the other islands, the Moldovans were forced back to Anatolia after failing to land. It seems that most of their army was focused on Rhodes now. The Greeks on Rhodes were able to force the Moldovans off the island thanks to a brave counter-attack against their only city and port on the island, Rhodes. The islands held, for now. After a year of negotiations with the Polish Ruthenians, they finally decided to join the Greek side. Not to save Greece, but rather to get Moldovan lands in Ukraine. Their invasion was able to reach not only Moldova, but also the Caucasus and Kazakhstan. The Greeks' morale was rising thanks to their new allies joining the war, but this would all change just as quickly as it started. The Polish weren't able to capture Moldova proper, nor were they able to use the oil they had taken, since Moldova destroyed millions of oil pumps and refineries. The Polish invasion had hit a standstill, as they were now trying to appease the Arab Union, which didn't want Poland to control the Caucasus, as they feared their oil monopoly falling apart. Still, Poland didn't have it super easy. They were pushed back immediately after making ground, as they couldn't defend the land. Within only 4 months the Poles had been pushed back to the original border, and a quarter of their army was trapped inside of Transylvania. However, the Poles were able to invade Hungary and free the encirclement, whilst also taking back most of Ukraine. However, just before the Polish invasion, the Moldavans landed on Greece. The place they landed at had a very small port and a small garrison. Their invasion force was made up of 70,000, many of which starved on the trip there. The Greek army was caught off guard, so they moved an army of 15,000 to hold along the mountains. The Greeks, however, were unaware of the massive size of the invasion. This invasion would be the downfall of the kingdom. The Moldovan invasion quickly spread south towards Athens. The Greeks desperately attempted to put up resistance, but they were unable to keep up with the Moldovan army, now split into 5 army groups. Soon Moldovan boots marched in Athens. To avoid damaging the ancient city, the Greek command ordered for all soldiers to lay down their arms or retreat to Corsica. Greece had fallen. Greece, Poland, Ruthenia, and Moldova all entered negotiations with the Arab Union as mediators. Greece was forced to cede African colonies along with most lands in Anatolia besides Constantinople and Smyrna. Moldova was forced to cede most of Ukraine. Greece also nullified the ceding of African colonies due to the conference, which would split Africa, not recognizing Moldovan claims to the land. The Greco-Moldovan War, also known as the Great Eastern War, ended with a Pyrrhic victory for Moldova. Millions died for a couple of unimportant coastal provinces. Many at the time had no idea how one war could bring a series of events that would lead Eastern Europe into the Great War.
Okay, just for a little bit of an afternote, this took way longer than it should have taken, but it's probably the best video I made so far, so I hope you enjoyed it, if you made it to the end. So yeah, like, subscribe, do whatever you gotta do. I would mainly just enjoy a like, so it can get out to more people. Thank you.